But yeah, so moving on to our next segment here, which is our what we call our big salad, which we talk about a little thing here in our eye today. Brought up, so I actually got a little combo deal for you. So wanted to talk about a really interesting game that I've played lately called Mysterium. It's from Libelut Productions. Really interesting game. For me, what I like about it is like one of my favorite games kind of like growing up to play was like Clue, because I like that whole like you needed to figure out like who got killed, where they got killed, and who and what weapon they use. Mysterium like scratches that itch of trying to figure out like a murder. So one player plays as the ghost of a murdered person, and the other players are basically psychics that came to this house where this murder happened. So when you play the game, based on how hard you want to make the game and how many players are playing, there's 3 different sets of cards that get laid out. One is a location that's in picture form. One is a person, and one is the weapon. So the way that it starts out is you have where the psychics go through like a sleep phase where they basically go to sleep, and the ghost has these cards that are these like abstract type of artwork on them. And the ghost basically has to, based on the information that they have, because they have like a little wall screen that they know for each player where the location, the person, and the weapon that killed them is. And you as the ghost have to basically hand one or more of these like abstract art cards to them, and they have to deduce what, you know, from where they, what section they are, whether it's the person, the place, or the weapon, like from that picture, what the ghost is trying to actually like convey to them. So it's really interesting because as the ghost, you cannot say anything. You can't do any facial expressions. You can't do anything. You have to be stone faced. Like this is the type of game for poker players. You know, cold face, just can't do anything. And it's interesting because when I played this with my wife and my friends, it was like handing out these cards and hearing everybody discuss back and forth what they think the cards mean. And you're sitting there like, oh, okay, I'm giving this person like this card that has like a picture of a rabbit wearing a top hat, or like wearing a hat because the guy that murdered them wears a hat. And then hearing them like, oh, there's a rabbit in it. Maybe it's a hunter. Maybe it's the hunter. And you're like sitting there in the back of your mind going, oh crap, I didn't even think about that. And like you can't say anything.
Yeah, because you mislead them. You send them down the wrong path.
Right. So it's really, really great because like you start off on the first section, you give them their cards. They have time to kind of like think about it. And then they put a little marker on which one they think it is. And then based on that, if they guess the right one, they move on to the next section. If they guess the wrong one, then they have to stay in that same area, and you start removing out cards. So as people guess the right ones, it starts removing. So the next turn that you have less cards to kind of pick from. So it's kind of neat in the way that they did it, where if you play it on the easy mode, once it's literally one card more than there are players. So if let's say 3 of the 4 players guess it right, that one player that guessed wrong literally will know what the next one is. But then you can make it really hard where you get 4 cards left over. And now you have a 25% chance to do this. And what's neat is it throws into the mechanic of you only have a certain amount of rounds to do this, or else everybody, you know, they lose. And what's pretty neat is I know like they reached out to you because they did come out with a Steam version of the game. And I actually got to play that as well. And it is literally a carbon copy of the game, which is great because they could have gone, like I've seen some of the board game conversions to digital, and they change things, change the little things here and there mechanically because they need to, because it's different in the digital version. But this thing is essentially like a perfect adaptation of the game to a digital format. And it's even better in my sense because you as the ghost can give the cards, and then you don't have to worry. You could be talking all you want. There's no like voice chat or anything like that. So it's like they can't hear what you're saying. But at the same time, what kind of like takes back from that is you can't hear, like they can't talk with one another to see what they're thinking. Like they can type chat, but at the same time, it's like, you know, it's kind of cool listening to your friends talk back and forth, and then you sitting there going, "Oh man, I can't believe that that's what I'm leading them down with this picture."
Yeah, so I know that on the website it talks about like it's 2 to 7 players, and its playtime's about 42 minutes. Now, when you're playing the Steam version, I take it you have to have at least 2 people. There's not a single player component.
Yeah, it's you have to have at least well, and then that's the big thing is I believe on the Steam version you can play the single version because it'll put AI, like you can play as the ghost and then the investigators are AI, or you can play as one of the investigator and the ghost is AI.
Okay.
So it can play single player. So like to kind of give you an idea, this is kind of like to give you an idea of like just some of the abstract art that they kind of do it. So like the thing that I love about this game is like the artwork on this thing. If there've ever been people out there that have played a game called Dixit, it's very, very similar. Like very beautiful, like whimsical type of artwork. And it's just interesting because it's like, you know, you'll see like this picture here, it's a pile of gold with like a crown and a scepter and all that. And I could sit there and be like one of the guys is a prince or whatever, and I can give you that gold card and I want you to focus in on the crown. But then you may look at that and be like, oh, it's money on it. That could be that the person that's doing it is like looks like a person that's more wealthy.
Right.
So it's really like they like I have to give it to these guys. Like the people that they picked for the artwork is just like unbelievable. Just how beautiful like these cards are. And that's like one of the things that like people that play Dixit, they say like that's the most beautiful thing of that game.
Now, when you play, now it says 42 minutes playtime, which is a good time. Like when you play the board game version, would you say that it lasts around that time, or, you know, obviously it's going to vary, but like what are longer games that you would say, like maybe over an hour or so?
Like, yeah, I mean, when we played, it was probably a good half hour to 45 minutes that we played. But it comes down to like a couple of factors. Number one, how many people you have playing. So shorter, you know, smaller group of people, shorter gameplay because the rounds will go by kind of quick. But more people you have, the longer it can take. And it also will come down to like how experienced the people are that are playing, like if they've played the game before, have they played board games before. But this is one of those type of games where it's got a really like low barrier to entry, so it's not that difficult of rules to understand and things like that. So it's like a great one where if you're into games yourself and you want to get friends of yours into it, really, really great like gateway game to kind of get people into it. But it's like it's such a like really nice, like quick, refreshing, like not a brain burner type of a game. This would be one of those type of games that it's like if you're playing like 2 brain burners of games, like something to play in between to kind of like trying to calm your mind down a bit. It's perfect for that.
Yeah, it's not expensive either. Right now, $9.99 on Steam. They already have a download update to the game where you can get for $1.99. So I mean that's pretty cool. Like I think the board game retails around $40-$50 max.
Yeah, it's $40. Yeah, and that's if you go into a local game store. Like if you look online, you can get it a little bit cheaper. But it's a really, like I said, that was a game that like it was a big buzz 2 years ago. And it was funny because 3 years ago it got really big bugs because it was originally a Polish. It came from Poland because like a lot of board games, as I've talked about in the past with the ObsoleteGamer show, like a lot of the biggest ones come out in Germany, in Europe, and then eventually they'll get ported into the United States. And one of the things that they're saying, like people that played the Polish version of the game, they were like, man, this game's phenomenal. However, the only kind of downside of the Polish version to the American version was it did not have the screen that the American version has. So you actually like laid down the cards face down in front of you as the ghost. And the big thing that like a lot of people were saying that they did not like about it is like when you were playing the Polish version, you were constantly kind of like peeking at the cards because you were like, okay, which one's who's this and what's that? And you had to kind of like remember whose card was here. Whereas with this one, and I'll kind of show you here. So this is kind of like the screen that they give you. It kind of folds out. You can see it's kind of big. But it has on the inside, you can see the different colors and its little pockets on the inside. So it actually lets you put the person, the place, and the weapon in there. Like really kind of good build quality cardboard and all that. Like nothing that is going to warp or break or anything like that. But it was that was like the one thing that a lot of people that played the Polish version and then played the newer edition in the English when they imported it, that they were like, if the Polish version would have had that, that would have been like, it would have been perfect. Like that was the one thing. And I know the American version, they added a new kind of rule to it where like I haven't played with it, where the way that it does it is, if I remember the rule right, is like if the lower amount of times that it takes you to guess the correct thing, you get these like what they call clairvoyance tokens. And then at the end of the game, what you do is the ghost takes all the locations from the people that actually committed that they had for each of the individuals. They kind of shuffle it up, and then they'll get one place, one person, one weapon, and that is the true murderer. And then the other players can use their clairvoyance tokens to get these clue cards, like the picture ones. So obviously, the better you do, the more of these clairvoyance cards you're gonna get. So like you can, so the way that they kind of like did it is you start at the location, you have a set amount of clairvoyance cards. You can choose how many clairvoyance tokens you want to use to get clues. So you're going to get a base, one clue, but you can spend the clairvoyance to get a second clue or more than that. And then it's trying to guess the correct place, person, and thing. And the person that can actually do that and get it correct, like you lay down, they're the ones that actually win the game. And that was a thing that like a lot of the reviewers, they were saying like it didn't really need that, but it's a kind of like neat thing to kind of make the game like a little bit more in-depth type of a thing. Because that is where a lot more people said that this is where it kind of like compares more to like the actual Clue game, because of that whole like, oh, you then have one specific person, one specific place, one specific thing. But it's a great game. Yeah, it's definitely like thumbs up for me. Like really, really fun game.